Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another community live call here tonight. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. We are going to kick off on time as always. But before I welcome tonight's special guest, I encourage you to grab a pen and paper because you're going to get some very, very powerful information tonight. And minimize distractions. If you're like me and most people, you probably pick up your phone during podcasts or during interviews and so on, and you get distracted. And this is something that you don't want to miss out on. We're going to keep the call to about 30 minutes tonight. We may go longer if we get on a roll, but our guest tonight is very, very busy. But before I introduce him, I'm just going to welcome a few people here on the call tonight. Deb, thanks for being here on the call. Ewa Roo is joining us as well. Freedom Warrior. Geraldine, Hillary, Kelly is out there. Thanks for being here, Kelly. Ken, Linda, Lisa, Lucy. Quite a big call tonight, folks. Obviously, people interested in learning more about the law. Knowledge is power. Megan, thanks for being here. Marita Forchette, thanks for being here. Melanie Reeves, g'day. Melanie, always great to have you. Nadine, Nisa, Rachel Flower Day. Rachel, you must be there with Mr. Ruben. Hello, Ruben and Rachel. Hope you're both well. Sally Adams, Zedwast, John. Wow, lots of people tuning in. Simon, Nin, Katja. Awesome, folks. Well, we have a very special call tonight. And without further ado, I will get to the point of introducing him. He's the founder of an organization called Phoenix Global, but he's been in the health and wellness space, for about 15 years now as well. He's also started a company called Soda Blast. But not only that, he's been involved with legal matters and unlawful disputes and claims for over 30 years. And I have had a lot of people share all sorts of different lawful and legal information with me, particularly over the last 18 months when my bank accounts were frozen. But since this whole, COVID agenda started, we've all had to become been forced to become more interested and knowledgeable when it comes to the law. And we've seen all sorts of so-called common law experts put their hand up and say, I've got a solution to this and a solution to that. And what we have seen is a lot of broken windows, people dragged out of cars, thrown through the courts, and it not working out very well. But it's very, very different when it comes to our special guest knowledge tonight. He's going to share with you how we can create liability and how we can learn to use the system against the system itself. So very special welcome to the one and only Dean Kesarlal. How are you, Dean?
G'day, mate. How you going?
I am awesome, mate. And I'm just so stoked that we got you on the call here tonight because your knowledge is second to none and your reputation out there for helping people get solutions is really growing. You've been running some very powerful workshops and I'm now living proof as to the power of your methods. Now, many people on the call here tonight would know that the mainstream media have been very naughty when it comes to saying naughty things about Dave Oneegs. And I won't say too much on the call tonight because they might even be listening. I'm sure they're actually I'm sure they're a little bit concerned about what they've done. Now, they said some things about me which weren't very nice. I gave them a notice, almost a year ago now, and they completely ignored it. But when I gave them one of your notices, they made some changes immediately and responded to me on exactly the 14th day, left it to the last minute at 10 to 7 this morning. We received that email. So, Dean, what could you say to people who have been very frustrated with so-called common law and are frustrated with getting nowhere in the system? Why is what you are doing so different?
Well, first of all, I think experience has got a lot to do with it. I've been, litigated against unlawful claims against me since I was 16 years of age. I'm now 48, so it's been well over 30 years. And I've been, dealing with lawyers and solicitors, Queen's counsels, you name it, for over 30 years. And I do it very differently because I like using the system against itself. A lot of people try and get out of the system, but it's very hard to help anybody or do anything when you're out of the system. The biggest problem that I've seen in learning what I've learned over 30 years, and this is all that I teach, I just teach people what I've learned. And it's up to everybody's own discretion to see if they want to use what I've learned. But the biggest problem I see when it comes to common law itself, common law, from my point of view, is very well misunderstood because the English set up the government, right? We're using English common law, but the court system is not an English common law court. It's a Roman Catholic court. So they're trying to use English common law in a Roman Catholic court which is a contract court pretty much. And there's two different factions. So when you have two different factions, you're playing two different games, and the process just doesn't seem to work. We also find that a lot of groups or people using different methods, they're very aggressive in their stance. A lot of people are using common law to try and get out of things, and that's not the way to do it. It's all about two main things: is learning how to create legal entitlement, and more so liability. If you can create liability, well, that's the biggest thing, because in this day and age, especially with all this COVID, nobody wants to be liable. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, look at the vaccine companies; they're profiting millions and billions of dollars, but they're not liable. The governments are pushing this through every system they can, but they're not liable. The doctors are being forced to do this, and everyone's losing their job, but the doctors aren't liable. So who the hell's liable then if something goes wrong? So it's all about learning how to create that liability. Now, even with, a lot of these, people are, protected against certain liability issues, but we can create liability with the process that we do. It's the same process that how they get us into court constantly. And when you understand how the process works, it doesn't really matter how, what process they're using, but if you do the same process to them, it's incredible how much power we have. The biggest, the most common comment that I have after our workshops is people say, we didn't realize we had this much power. And we do have a lot of power, but we don't know where the power is and how to actually exert those powers.
Well, Dean, give us a classic example. If you're out there on the call tonight and you've got an example that you'd like to run past Dean, please drop it in the comments. But let's say that there's an example whereby someone has been mandated to take an injection to keep their job or maintain their employment. They've rejected that injection. And now, what would that person do in that particular case if they want to make some sort of claim or start a case? Could you elaborate on that for us?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, this COVID, issue that's been happening over the last few years, this has been an amazingly well orchestrated process. I met a guy in 2003 called Steve. I brought him to Cairns, where I first was, to do a common law workshop because I was learning about common law. During the 3 or 4 day workshop, Steve said during the workshop that be aware that in the future, they're going to bring out a man-made RNA virus to basically, for the purpose of vaccinating the entire population. After the workshop, I said to Steve, I said, where did you get this nonsense from? And why the hell would you tell this, people in a public forum? And he just said to me, do your homework. So I researched for about 2 years. And in 2005, I found a video from a lady standing behind a podium, literally explaining to thousands of people behind the podium, stating that, they're going to vaccinate people, they're going to do it in 2021. And they spoke of a lot of other things as well. So since 2005, I've been telling a lot of my friends and family that they're going to vaccinate the entire world in 2021. And people thought, of course, it's just conspiracy theory. So they've had a long time to navigate through all the little loopholes, But once again, if you can learn how to create liability, it is extremely powerful. Now,
sorry to interrupt, Dean. By the way, you can share your screen if you have any concrete examples you wanted to share as well.
Yes. Oh, I'll do that actually. Now, one of the biggest concepts that they use is basically consent by default. A lot of people say, I don't want to deal with this corporation. It's a legal corporation. I don't want to do this vaccine because it's an illegal issue. Everything's illegal. But what you don't realize is most people have contracted to these illegal corporations. So you can't not pay something or not do something when you've got a legal contract stating that you will do it. Now, contracts, which is we're in contract law here, is they're implicit, they're hidden contracts, and this is what people don't understand. And it's called consent by default. Now, this is an example. I showed this last time we had our talk, but I'm just going to share my screen if you don't mind. I'll share my screen if you don't mind.
Hey Dino, you're pulling a bit of a crowd here, mate. You got 70 people chimed in to listen to you, and it keeps growing by the minute. So stick around, folks. It gets better.
Oh, this is consent by default, right? Now, let me just show you this. Sorry. For some reason, sorry. Can you guys see this?
Gotcha. Yeah, nice and clear.
Now, this is a good example of consent by default, how we contract without even realizing it. And this will stand up in any courtroom in Australia. This is an old e-tag pack. You know the e-tag packs that you have for your car, when you're going through a toll, these illegal corporations?
Yep.
Now, it was in a green alfoil packet. It was sealed with this sticker. right? This was from quite a few years ago. Now, up the top here, the word in, actually, a note, I'll just get my little tool. I'll grab my toolbar. So the mouse, sorry, here's a little drawing. No, never mind. So the word important, warning, and notice are legal documents. Now, this is consent by default. The first part is pretty simple. Before you open this e-tag pack, read the customer service agreement and other information provided to you. Now, here's the contract. It says here, by opening the e-tag pack, you agree in full to the customer service agreement. Now, my question to the viewers, where is the customer service agreement? It's inside the damn packet.
Inside
right?
the pack. So you open the pack and you
have to open the packet to read the customer service agreement. But in doing so, you've legally agreed to all the terms of the agreement. And every contract is the same, whether it's hidden contracts, they're implied contracts, everything today is a contract. So we have to realize that we've contracted to these illegal corporations. A lot of people are not paying their tolls, that they're going to a lot of other groups. They're not paying their tolls because the toll companies are an illegal corporation. It doesn't matter because you've contracted to that illegal corporation. And this is what people don't really understand. You can't not pay when you've got a contract stating that you will pay. So we have to understand where the contracts lie and how to break those contracts or how to use those contracts in your favor.
In this case, Dean, because you've contracted by default, are you able to exit such a contract?
Every contract can be made null and void if you know how to do it.
Okay.
This is what I teach in my workshop. However, in saying that, some contracts, you don't want to break all the contracts because part of the problem is the way that I do things, I use the system, right? Now, we are all under contract anyway. We all have a duty of care obligation, to your community. So if you're caught doing 100 in a 40 zone, and I have 7 kids and I don't want my kids to get run over. So if you're doing 100 in the 40 zone, you can't use common law or what I teach to try and get out of not paying the ticket because you broke the law. We have a duty of care to our community. So we have to make sure that we're moral in our stances. And a lot of people are using this the wrong way to try and get out of things. And that's not the right process.
Dean, on that though, I'm sure there's every single person out here on this call has had a speeding fine at some time. Now, I have one currently that I've received. There's a little speed trap up the road where it does a sneaky little drop down from 60 to 50 for a few hundred meters and jumps back up to 60. And they had some goon there in the bushes hiding with a laser and got me for going, a handful of kilometers over the speed limit. I think it's very low, 7 or 8 kilometers over. Whatever the minimum is, they got me for it. Now, is this something that I could challenge, do you think, in this particular case, or am I just done because I'm on their roads and I've contracted with them?
Yeah, if you're on the road and actually broken the speed limit, you've contracted that. But if they come to you with an unlawful claim, then you can definitely challenge that.
And what would the example of the unlawful claim be?
Unlawful claim, we see this all the time because speed cameras have to be they have to basically get they have to be registered, they have to be calibrated every certain time. So when we go through the process, if it's an unlawful claim, we've had people that were doing the speed limit and they caught the car in front of them, but it might have government plates, so they let that one go and they get the person behind them, even though the person is 100% aware and people were passing them. So that was an unlawful claim against them, and we used the process, and the ticket was basically, ripped up. It's very powerful.
And what do you say to people who, they say, oh, look, I'm traveling on the King's Road. I'm traveling in my own conveyance. I'm a Commonwealth national and this sort of thing when they try and, I guess, operate outside of the system. I'm guessing that's not working because they've made a contract and then they're not honoring the contract. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Now, to give you an example, I was asked to do a little presentation at a common law group many years ago. I did my little talk, and afterwards, the guy in the front row said to me, he put his hand up, because Dean, we are all out of the system. And I said, why? He goes, well, we all paid as a group, and we got our sovereign birth certificate, as a lot of these groups do. We signed that with our purple ink with our thumb, so we're out of the system. And I said, so because you've had your sovereign birth certificate, you think you're out of the system? And they said, yes. I said, do you all agree here? And they said, yes, we agree. And I said, really? So because of that, you think you're out of the system? I said, how did you guys get here? And I said, what do you mean? I said, how did you guys get to the venue? Well, we drove. Most of us drove here. I said, you drove in the car that you paid for in your capital letters? Yes. And you're paying insurance on the car in your capital letters? Yes. And you got your Queensland driver's license in your capital letters? Yes, and you're driving here on their roads. You're in the system.
You're in,
You know,
man.
it doesn't matter. And the lady beside the gentleman said, well, do you have your sovereign birth certificate? I said, no, I don't. I said, well, how do you know if you're free? That's what she said. I said, that's part of the problem. If you need a piece of paper to tell you that you're free, you're not free. I was born a free natural man. If I'm free, I claim it. When I write my notices, I claim I'm a natural, free-born man, living man. It's a big, you don't need a piece of paper to tell you that you're free. And people are paying for this sovereign birth certificate to tell them that they're free. You don't need that because
don't need that.
They're free, And
hey, sorry to cut you off there. Do you mind just not sharing screen there? Because we can't.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I've just got you as a tiny little square in the corner.
Sorry.
But
yes.
I think you make an incredibly powerful point there. It isn't a matter of papers and letters and so on. It's knowing, Tom Barnett talks about this a lot too, is knowing who you are, knowing exactly who you are and standing in that. But having some of this knowledge that you're going to be sharing a bit more of tonight is another huge step in the right direction. So I did cut you off, sorry, Dean, but please tell us more, and please jump in the chat if you've got anything you'd like to ask Dean, because he's like the busiest man I know.
Let me show you this, right? Sorry, I'll just click over here. Sorry. Because I've lost your screen here. Sorry. Nothing's working here. You guys can all see me?
We can see you perfectly clear, mate.
That's okay. Can't see
you're looking very well, actually, Dean.
Oh, thank you very much.
For someone who works about 20 hours a day and runs 10 businesses.
13 businesses and 7 kids. So yeah, it's crazy.
13 businesses, 7 kids. Wow.
Let me show you something here, right? Because this is part of the problem. I'll show you this first, because common law and the way that the court process works in particular comes out of the Bible. Now, people don't realize this. The first thing you do when you go to court is you raise your right hand, you swear in the Bible. If you swear in the Bible in court, you've lost all your common law rights. You can't stand, behind your Christian principle, because the Bible says you can't swear in the Bible.
Say that again. Slow down. That's huge. So I think I've just frozen there a little bit. So when we swear on the Bible normally in court, that's something that we don't want to do, correct?
Yeah, we don't want to swear in the Bible. If you want to stand behind your Christian principles, now, if you know that the whole court process comes out of the Bible, right? The whole judicial process, how a judge or a magistrate convenes over its courtroom, everything is in the Bible. And when you understand that, if you go to court and swear on the Bible, and the Bible clearly states you should not swear in the Bible, you've lost all your common law rights, so to speak. You can't stand behind your Christian principles and use that to create your entitlement in court. And I've seen it many times. Back when I was first doing this, there was nothing else. Nowadays, they do say, do you swear or affirm? You always say affirm. Even when you go to a JP and you sign documents, now they've got two. You can swear or you can affirm. Even when you're doing documents, never swear, only affirm. Because if you go to court and you want to stand on your Christian principles and use this to defend yourself, they'll say, well, Your Honor, they can't use this because they swore in the Bible, which goes against their oath. Wow. Now, the type of Bible that we need is really important, because look, let me show you this. Here are 2 different Bibles. I think I showed this last time, but it's pretty important. Here are 2 different Bibles. One's red pages, one's white pages, but they're the same Bible. It's the King James version of the Bible. Now, can you notice anything different between these 2 Bibles?
One's thicker than the other?
One's thicker. Now, if they're both the same font, right? It's about 1.5 or 2 font or something. So why is one thicker? They're both the same font and both the same. This one is thicker because this one has something that this one doesn't. This one has what they call the Apocrypha, right? It's called here. You can see. Let's see if I can. Can I see this? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Gotcha. The Apocrypha.
The
okay,
Apocrypha.
And that's KJV, yeah?
Yes. Now, the Apocrypha are about 14 books that have been taken out of the Bible in about 1800s. Now, why would they take out 14 or 15 books out of the Bible that no other Bible from then has today? Why would they do that?
Why?
Exactly. This is what they don't want you to know. In that section, it explains a lot of court processes, judicial processes that the courts that today use every single day. So if you want to be knowing and understanding how the common law process works, this is definitely one of the places to look, because you can find out how a court is to be convened, how you call witnesses, what creates your witnesses. It's all in the Bible here, and people don't realize this. When I go to court, I bring my Bible with me, and I bring my legal dictionary. This is the LexisNexis Concise Legal Dictionary. These two books I use every day to create legal entitlement, right? And we have to understand what the law sees as the definitions for us. And, everybody talks about the straw man, the straw man. People say it's a big conspiracy theory, the straw man thing. The word straw man is actually not the right wording in today's legal dictionaries. It's in there as well, but it's not a conspiracy because we have two identities, right? We have a corporate identity and we have our sovereign identity. Now, to show you what I mean, this is the latest legal dictionary, the LexisNexis Australian. This is the dictionary of the courts. This is what the courts use, right? Australian courts. Listen to this. This is a legal definition of a natural person, right? Legal definition of a natural person. A natural person is a human being in the ordinary sense, as opposed to an artificial person or entity such as companies, which is recognized as a legal person under the law. So that's a natural person. So what does artificial person mean, according to the legal dictionary? An entity recognized by law, but which is not a real person. For example, a company. So when you look at the definitions of what the law states, and people don't realize this, you don't have to go to Old English common law, just look at what the dictionary says today. And then you'll start to unravel what's going on and how the law sees us in its system. Now, if you do things correctly, you can jump in and out of your sovereign person and your corporation when it suits you. Use the system to its advantages. Don't try and get out of it because you can't help anybody when you're out of the system.
And is the system, Dean, we hear a lot of people talking obviously about maritime admiralty law and getting some confusion around that. Is the capital letters legal fiction in the maritime admiralty law jurisdiction? It
is actually, but it's what the Roman Catholic Court have done. It's more coming under contract law, because when you go to court, every court document is a contract, is a notice. A notice amounts to a contract, a legal contract. When you go to court, when you serve your documents, it's a claim notice. It's a statement of claim notice. You have to file a notice of intention to defend, a notice to admit the facts, a notice to, they're all notices. It's a contract court. Every time I've been to court, I never argue law and I never argue science. I always argue the contract because it's a contract court. They don't care if it's a legal corporation or not. What they care about is that you have a contract between these two parties. You've agreed on this. This is a contract court, so we're going to rule on the contract. And this is how I've done it when you learn how to create legal entitlement. Now, the reason why the mandates were so important, because they had this wrapped up, is because how does the law see most employees, right? And this is interesting because what do you think, Dave? What do you think the word servant means? What's a servant?
Someone who serves, someone who's, I guess, slave, right? a subordinate. Yeah, a slave.
It's a slave. Now, the word servant in the legal dictionary says this: is a person in the service of another, a term formerly used to describe a person employed by another person, the master. Then it says later, the master-servant relationship based on the domestic model of service was progressively replaced by the more modern term employer-employee relationship, regulated by the contract of employment and industrial legislation. The word servant is still found in some statutes and legislation in the sense of the word employee. So the legal definition of a servant is employee, right? Gotcha. So if you work for somebody as and you have a boss as an employee-employer, the law sees you as a servant. Now, what's a servant supposed to do according to the definitions? Listen to the master, right? So when your master says to you, you will get vaccinated or else this, this, and this, your rights are a lot less, because as a servant, who's got more rights in this model here, the servant or the master?
The master.
The master.
You know, I noticed, Dean, they have the credit card, MasterCard. That's
it's not.
It's right in front of us, yeah?
It's right in front of us every single time. And everything for government documents is in capital letters. That's your corporation. That is your entity, not your sovereign self.
Just changing tack a little bit here as we discuss this, especially in light of current events. What was your take on the referendum? Did you see that as an attempt to form a contract with the sovereign people of Australia, and that it was a deceitful contract? What was your perception that whole facade that's just gone on. It looks like they're going to try and push it through anyway and ignore the people who spoke up.
Well, it's funny you say that because, you know, a lot of these referendums aren't worth the paper they're written on because, you know, the power isn't with the people anymore. You know, it's totally opposite the way it used to be. Look at 1988. Australia voted at a referendum to a no third-tier government, correct?
Correct.
So what the hell is local government then? We've got federal, state. So what's local government? Are they a third-tier government?
Correct.
No, they're not, because Australia voted no third-tier government. So they're not a third-tier government. They're a corporation. They've got ABN numbers. So they're running as a commercial enterprise, not as a local government. They don't come under the Local Government Act because that's federal and state. So they've sort of done exactly what they wanted to do, even though Australia voted on the referendum, no third-tier government, and people constantly say, well, hang on, so what the hell is the local councils? What are they? That's a third-tier government. They said, no, we're not, because legally we're under Corporations Act. We're not as a government department because we've got ABNs. So we're not a third-tier government, but we're going to legislate you anyway now. So the referendum, from my point of view, to be honest with you, yes and no, I didn't really look into it too much because they don't care. They just do what they want to do in a different way. They'll see how everybody votes, and then we're going to create a loophole that we're going to get it through anyway, and then they can't get us anyway. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what's going on.
They'll just contract another way.
Yeah, you would. I'm not sure if you saw today, but Jacinta Price was trying to get the this Royal Commission to investigate the crimes against Indigenous children. And Labor and Greens voted it down because they apparently want to help the Indigenous. Like, you can't make this stuff up anymore. Anyway, don't get me fired up there. Let's stay on topic.
Yeah, don't get me started on this, you know.
But tell us more. I'm just going to check the comments here and see if we've got a couple of questions. We have quite a few people on the call here tonight. 85.
Wow, that's cool. Are you there? You're frozen, Dave. I think Dave's frozen.
Sorry, Dave?
You're right. Yep.
Did you hear the question?
No, sorry. Everything just froze.
Yeah, sorry. My internet gets a bit unstable here. Lynette was asking, what's our best option, Dean, in protecting our properties? I've been looking at a private trust. Did you care to elaborate on that at all? Yeah,
it's funny because I've been dealing with this. I dealt with this quite a lot about 15 years ago, but all this is coming up again. We've got a lot of people who've got properties from their great granddads. Now, the older properties, which are still, if you can go to the land titles and get the actual land title of the property, if it does say, in fee simple on the actual land title, which means you've got total control of that property. Now, if you've got total control of the property, full autonomy, and control of that property, the council have no rights to impose any levy or anything because the councils come under the Corporations Act. So we're doing a lot of things in the background to deal with that at the moment. I can't go into detail on here, but we're in the process of doing some pretty big stuff with people's property right now because the council have no legal right. But again, once you contract, if you start paying something, you've agreed to the contract. It's all about learning how to basically nullify the contract. And this is what we're about to do right now.
And so, Dean, you know how we're hearing about all these, I guess, plans of the World Economic Forum to kind of steal national sovereignty and, usurp, I guess, the government's power. And, there's a lot of different conspiratorial kind of ideas floating around out there. And there's also a lot of things that have been put forward, whether it be these attempts from the WEF and the UN, or whether it be the censorship bill that's coming through. When you see these sorts of things, do they concern you? Or do you always think, you know what, I'll be able to still create liability and so on?
Creating liability seems to be one of the biggest factors that I've dealt with in the last 30 years. That's the most powerful thing that I think we as a people have, because that's part of the problem. No one's liable. Now, it all concerns me. I could see all this coming from years and years and years ago, all this censorship bill. And I mean, it's just all ridiculous. But if we can learn how to create liability, it really does protect us as a community, right? And this is what we're doing with the Phoenix community. Everybody's educated. So when they come at you with these unlawful claims, we know how to deal with them from their point of view. And it's very important to do it from their point of view because we like to use the system. So got to fight fire with fire. Use their system against themselves. And nobody seems to know how to do that correctly. So, I'm just teaching people what I've learned over the 30 years. And bloody powerful stuff. I think you're frozen again, mate.
Sorry, I think am I back in town? Am I back here?
Yes, you're back here, mate.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Dean, if you could, yeah, got you loud and clear. Am I okay?
Yep.
All right, good. My case, we won't elaborate too much right now, because it's obviously still, I guess, there's some processes going on. But when, for instance, the mainstream media has been, publishing misinformation, or if anyone's been publishing misinformation about someone, or blatant lies, defamation, and so on, can you talk people through how they can potentially deal with that?
Yes. Now, it all comes down to liability again. Now, if the mainstream media says something about you that is untrue, it's how do we create that liability? Now, there's a thing called basically it's consent by default, but how can I say this? When they create these lies about people, how do we create liability against them? Now, there's a thing called the burden of proof. The burden of proof goes to the accuser or the one asserting something onto you. So if somebody in the media says something about you that is a lie, the burden of proof goes to them because they're the ones accusing you or asserting something onto you. Now, the burden of proof, according to the law, is twofold, which is legality and evidence. So under what authority do you have to do this? And show me the evidence to back up your claim. Most people today have the wrong idea because when something comes for you, back in the Bible days, it was innocent until proven guilty, right? Today, it's the other way around. It is guilty until proven innocent. Now, if you understand that simple thing, anything that comes your way, you are deemed guilty by the Lord. You have to now prove your innocence. But it's how we prove our innocence. And you don't have to prove your innocence. They have to prove that you're guilty because the burden of proof goes to them. And most people are doing it the wrong way around. They're trying to find legislation to prove that I'm innocent. I didn't do this, and I'm going to prove that I didn't do this. You don't have to do that. They have to prove that you're guilty.
Right.
By those two faults. So we write them a notice and we say, under what authority do you have to do this? And show me the irrefutable evidence to back up your claim. If you cannot provide those two things, legally, you have no claim against me. That creates liability.
All right. So let's use an example. Let's say a naughty publication has gone out and says, Dave Oneegs misappropriated funds that were raised for the floods. Now, they've made the statement.
Yes.
The onus of proof is on them. They have to categorically prove
those two things, legality and evidence. So we can write them a notice to say, notice to show cause. Basically, notice to show cause why we shouldn't sue you for this, this, and this. Now, burden of proof goes to you guys. So you show me under what authority do you have to actually write this and do this, and legality, the evidence. Show me the evidence to your claim, and you prove that I'm guilty. Take notice that failure by you to provide the irrefutable evidence in the form that we demand, it shall be taken that you have no legal claim against me. And then that creates liability. Now, in the Bible, it clearly states you need 2 or more witnesses to convict somebody of a crime. How do they create witnesses today? They're paper witnesses. This is why we write the notice number 1, notice number 2, notice number 3. There's a process, and that's how they get us in the court. Let's say I've got a mortgage. COVID happened. I lost my job. I'm now in arrears. I can't pay my mortgage. So what happens? You get a notice of demand from the bank. Dear sir, we notice that you haven't paid your mortgage payment. You're in arrears. So we give you 28 days to basically remedy this, or else we can take further legal action. If you don't respond with another legal notice or pay that, that's witness number 1 against you. Then you get a notice to remedy. Dear sir, we notice you haven't paid this, and you've been given 28 days. But because we're so awesome, they have to give you time to make good the contract. So we now give you a further 14 days to make good the contract. We now give you 14 days to pay. If you don't pay within 14 days or respond correctly within 14 days, there's witness number 2 against you. Then you get a notice of breach. Dear sir, you didn't respond or pay within 28 days or 14 days. But because we're so awesome, we're now going to give you a further 7 days. And if you don't pay or respond, you've now breached the contract. If you don't pay or do anything within 7 days, there's 3 paper witnesses against you. Then you get a final notice before court proceedings. They give you another, usually 7 days to pay. And they also usually do a statutory declaration saying that everything we've done is true and correct. So now you might have 5 or 6 paper witnesses against you. If you go to court and you've got all your evidence, you think I've got all my evidence, what they've done is wrong, you will lose because by way of statute, you've got 5 witnesses against you. And that's how they do it. So we have to learn how to create our own witnesses against them.
Wow.
Take them through the process. And when you create liability and create legal entitlement through their process, you go to court. It's bloody powerful.
I love how you write your notices. Like, it's just so powerful. And then at the end, it's very, very friendly. It says, I hope to resolve this in a peaceful and happy, kind, friendly way.
You're a valued customer and I wish to finalize this as soon as possible. We have to maintain that because the law states that you can't be emotional. You can't be deemed to be forceful, right? You can demand with respect. And that's part of the game. If you go to court, they're not arguing. It's usually, Your Honor, if I may, if the court pleases, or you may rise. It's all part of the game. And if you don't play that game, you can be seen as a vexatious litigant and it'll get thrown out of court. And this is where a lot of people don't realize what they've done in the past can catch up because they can look back in your social media or whatever and say, this guy said this and this and this, that's against the courts, that's vexatious, thrown out of court. You don't even get a chance to actually show your evidence. So we've got to play the game.
Got to play the game. And look, I know a few people locally lately who have just, they've had their cases thrown out because they've had the wrong attitude. They might have had some decent knowledge, but if you go in there with the wrong attitude, it just doesn't wash, does it?
It doesn't wash, no. And that, you don't see lawyers arguing with each other because it's all about respect. It's all, it's all part of the facade, but if you want to play that game, you've got to play the game. And that's why
it's a game. It's a court, right?
That's correct. And at the that's why it's called a court. It's a game. It's back and forth and back and forth. It's your serve. Now it's my serve. It's your serve. But we have to understand how they create this legal entitlement against us constantly. And people don't realize it. And everything we do in today's world, and what I teach, we can use in everyday situations. If there's an unpaid invoice or whatever it is, and everything we do is contract. If you go to a shopping mall or shopping center, and you go down an escalator, there's a notice up the top, right? It's saying, put your hands and feet inside. If something happens, we're not liable. If you go down that escalator or the travelator or whatever, you've agreed to those terms of the notice. If you go to a public car park and you park there, there's a notice. If something gets stolen or your car gets damaged, we are not liable for the damage or what's stolen. So if you park there, you've agreed to the terms of that notice legally, right? You haven't got to leg this down because you've agreed to those terms. Gotcha. So when you understand those, and this is the biggest thing, like with the vaccine, it's all got to do with consent, but there's 2 forms of consent. There's consenting. Now, consenting is actually saying I consent. It's not just in the absence of objection, you know what I mean? It's actually saying I consent, but informed consent is agreeing, knowing all the risks. So a lot of these people that have got the jabs, they gave consent, but you can give your consent back because it wasn't informed consent, because the doctors didn't explain any of the risks when I actually got my jab. You know what I'm saying? So informed consent is not valid. Valid consent is legally binding. So you can withdraw your consent if it wasn't informed consent, and that becomes not valid, which becomes legally not binding.
Powerful. Dean, I've got another question here for you from Linda. She says, Dean, one topic so many ask about is local councils, which we touched on earlier, specifically rates and works people do on their property that require permits, fees, etc. from the council. Given people voted no to the creation of local councils in the 1988 referendum, and that councils are corporations with ABNs, is there any advice you can give in regards to dealing with councils and rates, etc.?
Well, look, every contract can be negotiated, right? Every contract can be negotiated. Now, we have to look at it both ways because you can't, a lot of people in this space, they want things both ways. You can't have it both ways. Like, I can explain this. There was a lady who had a property, 25 years as a property. This example, right? It was an investment property. Now, when she rang me, after 25 years having the property, she rang me just through a friend. I've never met her before. She rang me on the phone and she said, Dean, I'm going through court action at the moment because I didn't pay the rates for 6 years or something, that they're asking all these tens of thousands of dollars from me. And I said, okay, well, what's your defense? Well, my defense is that this is not me. This is my sovereign self, not my corporation, so this isn't me. And I said, well, hang on a second, you can't have it both ways though. I said, if you go to court with this isn't me, you're going to lose. And she said, what do you mean? I said, this is not, the contract is an uppercase, and I realize that, but you can't have it both ways. She goes, what do you mean you can't have it both ways? I said, let me ask you this. In the past 25 years when you've had the property, have you received any benefits to your sovereign self from the property? She goes, what do you mean benefits? The money that you received, did you use any of those funds to buy makeup, to buy food, to buy anything for your sovereign self? Well, yes, I did. So you've reaped the benefits on your sovereign self, but you don't want to pay the downside. You can't take the benefits of something but not pay the other side. You know what I'm saying? So I said, if you go to court and you go with that, you will lose. And she goes, well, you haven't even heard my whole defense yet. I said, I don't need to, because the court will deem that. Well, hang on a second. The contract is still stands because for the last 25 years, you've paid the rates. So that means you've agreed to the terms of the contract. So now all of a sudden you're not agreeing. You have to learn how to break the contract. You can't not pay if you're still under contract. And she said, well, I'm not really under contract with them. I said, do you have a mortgage document? Well, yes, that's your contract. So she says, well, no, it's a mortgage document. It's a mortgage document, that's a contract. So you can't not pay if you've contracted. If you don't want to contract, you can break the contract first, then you not pay. But in doing that, you've got to be careful. When it comes to rates and councils, we have to look on both sides. The councils do come and take out your bins, right? They do fix the landing strip, and if a tree line, they chop the trees there. So the councils do things for those rates, right? So if you get rid of the council, well, then you have to make sure that these things, people want those things. If something happens, you want the police to turn up. Do you? Maybe not. If something happens, you want the ambulance to turn up, or you want the benefits. If you want those benefits, you have to learn how to have the other side. But
electricity, running water, all these sorts of things.
Stuff. So a lot of people are using it the wrong way when they're reaping all the benefits, but you don't want to pay the downside. Well, if you want those benefits, you've got to pay for those benefits, right? Otherwise, you're going to go and live in a mountain by yourself like a hermit with no electricity, no running water, rubbish everywhere, and people don't want to do that. So if you want to live in the Western world, you have to learn how to use the system against itself and live within the system. I've got 7 kids and 13 businesses. So I need the system because the system is there for a reason. Don't try and get away from it. Use it to your advantage. How do you think I've been successful in doing what I'm doing? I'm using the system. So
well said.
When it comes to those rates, I will say this though, every contract can be negotiated. So if your rates are a certain level, you can negotiate your rates to be lower. So, you got to be moral. Okay, the council provide this, and these services for me. But morally, I think this is a bit too much to ask for these services. So you can negotiate your contract.
But you're saying I can negotiate my exorbitant power bill?
100%. Every contract can be negotiated. A contract is an agreement between two parties. They can't enforce.
Can I potentially negotiate my outstanding speeding fine?
You can. Every contract can. If you can't pay the speeding fine, you can negotiate. I can't pay it now because I don't have the funds due to financial hardship. If you say those words, they have to come to the party. Due to financial hardship. If they force something and you're claiming financial hardship, that's deemed to be vexatious because they have a process they have to go through. Then you can say, I can't pay the whole thing now, but I can pay it off over 12 months. And they'll let you pay it off over 12 months. So anything can be negotiated. The contract, because the contract is two parties that both agree. They can't enforce something onto you because you both don't agree. You can't enforce a contract. You can't go into contract under duress. And that's, if they don't do that, that's under duress. You're not allowed to do that. That's illegal.
Got you. We've seen a lot of duress in the last 3 or 4 years, haven't we?
God, haven't we ever?
Dean, I remember you sharing a story, and we're going to wrap up. Gosh, that 45 minutes went fast. I knew it was going to go fast, man. Yeah,
that's fast.
And you've had everyone.
I haven't even touched the surface.
not a single person has left the call here. I've got 85 people hanging off every word you're saying. It's powerful information, Dean. The way you deliver it is beautiful as well. Apparently, we've had a couple of trolls. A couple of trolls disappeared. Our resident troll slayer has been busy, but I remember you telling a story about how you had an outstanding invoice from someone who was very reluctant to pay and was a bit of a serial ripper-offerer. Yes. You might call them. Could you share that story for our listeners tonight?
Well, that was back in 2003. Actually, that was the first notice that I ever wrote in 2003. A guy called Bob. I used to do work on a prawn trawler. And I did some hydraulic work because I was in hydraulics. I did hydraulic works for the guy. Everybody at the wharf, said, do not do any work for this guy. Now, I give people the benefit of the doubt, right? I'm just that type of person. So I did work for the guy, and he said, come back tomorrow and I'll pay you for the job. It was only $902, I think it was. But back then, 2003 is a long time ago. $902 for a business person was a lot of money. So I went back the next day, and the boat had sailed. It was a trawler. The boat sailed to Indonesia, back to Indonesia. That should have been one of my first clues. But anyway, so I rang the guy up and I said, hey, Bob, what's going on? The boat's gone. How do I get payment? And he just said, I'm not paying you. I said, why not? And I said, because, nothing. I said, was there something wrong with the job? What's going on? He said, I'm just not going to pay you. So what do you mean? Everybody at the wharf was saying, I told you so, I told you so. But this went on for about 12 months. And then I got Steve involved and I learned more about common law. 2003, which is just a bit over a year later, I went through the process. Now, you have to understand, Bob was every second word was F this and F that. He was swearing. He just got angry constantly. So for over a year, I was calling Bob and asking for money. He was going, you're never going to get your money. There was nothing wrong with the job. He just didn't like me. I don't know what it was. And he says, it'll cost you more in legal fees to basically get the money. So, you can stick it. I'm not going to pay you. Now, the beauty about common law and going through this process, it doesn't cost you a cent to create illegal entitlement. So I wrote my notice number one. After my notice number one, I sent it to him. I gave him 28 days to pay. He rang back and he was swearing over, who the hell do you think you are? Bloody, you're not a bloody lawyer and blah, blah, blah. And, you black this, and he was swearing his head off. Right? Then the lawyer contacted me. His lawyer contacted me and said, look, Bob's not going to pay. I've told Bob not to call you because he can get a bit irate and everything. Anyway, I waited the 28 days. I then gave him the second notice to remedy. I basically said, Bob, I notice you haven't paid according to my records. I now give you a further 14 days to make good the payment. You're a valued customer, and I hope we can sort this out ASAP, And I wish to, and after 14, I sent that notice out, and he rang me back about, a couple of hours later, swearing his head off at me, you effing this, and you call me C, you name it, every term under the sun. And his lawyer told him not to ring you, but, anyway, he didn't pay within 14 days. I then wrote my third notice, and in the third notice, I said, well, we basically created legal entitlement now that this is the final notice, and I'll now give you 7 days. And within 7 days, I got my $902 back. And because the lawyer knew that if this goes to court, we will lose because they've created the legal entitlement. If this goes to court in their system, they are guilty by way of statute. The paperwork says he's guilty. See what I'm saying?
100%.
We take it to court and away you go.
Paperwork says he's guilty.
Certain things are more difficult than others, but I tell you what, when you go through the process correctly, it is extremely powerful. From an invoice to dealing with the health department, 8.5 hours in court case with the health department. I beat them as well. It's been 30 years of this, 30 years of court battles, litigations, because everything I do, my businesses, a lot of it's world's first this, and I've invented products which they don't want come on the markets. I can eliminate 100% of chemicals in a lot of different places. I got litigated against chemical companies because they don't want my product to come on the market. 2.5 years of battling, didn't cost me a cent. I beat them again.
Wow.
I've got 30 years of stories, and this is my experience. I've had a lot of people say, you're not a bloody lawyer. You're not qualified for this. Qualified, but 30 years of experience dealing with barristers and solicitors and Queen's counsels and you name it. It's all about creating legal entitlement and learning how to create liability. That's the biggest thing.
Well, I was blown away. You helped me get immediate response from one of the biggest media organizations in Australia. And I'll just say to everyone listening out there who's followed my journey, the media have been very naughty. And they're going to, when it comes to Dave Oneegs, and saying some very naughty things that aren't true. And I'm looking forward to taking this as far as I possibly can, Dean, because
I'll help you do it. And sorry, can I just butt in? The media, when COVID happened, because it's against the law to manipulate somebody to do something that they don't want to do. Now, even the ads on TV, when COVID happened, the ads on TV were, do the right thing, get vaccinated. That implies that if you don't get vaccinated, you're doing the wrong thing, right? And a lot of people did just that, got the vaccine, and their slogan was, I'm just doing for the greater good, I'm doing the right thing. People said to me, why aren't you getting vaccinated? Do the right thing. Where are you getting that from? Well, the TV. That's manipulation. That is against the law. So we have to learn how to create legal entitlement against that. Powerful stuff, mate. I can go on.
Look, it's genius stuff. And look, I am so looking forward to going further down this road with you, Dean. And I guess everyone on the call here tonight needs to know as well. Dean has a vision for creating an army of empowered, knowledgeable people who aren't going to be pushed around anymore like we have been. Like we've been really heavily pushed around, whether it be by the media or by the institutions and GovCo and so on. And we need to be able to stand up for ourselves, and we need this knowledge. So, Dean, you have a full day workshop coming up online, folks. I did this workshop a few weeks back, and gosh, it went so quickly. I got so much out of it, but I can't wait for the next one. Dean, tell us about the dates for the next workshop and what's involved.
It's on the 19th. It's on a Sunday because it's a 6-hour workshop. You get an hour off for lunch. And a lot of people say to me, 6 hours, I can't sit, I'm going to fall asleep. And people say, I was sitting on the edge of my seat for 6 hours. I said, it's unbelievable that you can keep people awake for 6 hours and present something that is completely different and empower people. So it's on the 19th of November. It's on a Sunday. Starts at 9 o'clock, ends at 3 o'clock. Usually we have up to 2 hours of questions and comments afterwards as well. So it can be like a full-on 8-hour day, but you do it in the comfort of your own home as well. I do like to do the live presentation, so I love being in front of people, and it's a much better environment. But the live ones, a lot of people can't get to a live event, so I'm doing the online one. If you're interested, it's $160 for 6 hours, and you'll see the whole legal system a completely different way. What I do, nobody out there does what I do in the way that I do it. I'm not saying that to be conceited, just to show I've done my homework, and I've been through the mills, and experienced 30 years of litigation against me for all these unlawful claims, and it's pretty powerful stuff. So I hope a lot of people can join me on that day.
Look, I'll tell you guys something, right? So when it came to dealing with some of these porcupines from the mainstream media, the latest solicitor I spoke to wanted at least $100, just $800, sorry, just to draft up a letter. And here's the thing: I could have got that letter drafted up for $800, but it wouldn't have given me any power. I'm handing my power over to someone else to work on my behalf. Whereas Dean is, what's the saying? Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, eats forever. And that's what Dean is really teaching us all to do, folks. I really encourage you, put the day aside, put the time aside. When it comes to legal matters, $160 doesn't get you anything. Yeah. It won't even get you a phone call.
Can I just say, so I know we're stretching this out, sorry. Sorry, people know you want to get going. But, I've had lawyers and, Queen's counsels, QCs do my workshop. And they've said when I've spoken about the lawyers, they've cringed because they know what I said was correct. Now, what I say in my workshop is this, that lawyers and solicitors and barristers, they do not know the law. They know process of law, which is the court process. That's what they know. They don't know how to create legal entitlement. Their job usually is to drag it out as long as possible because that's how they make their money, right? And this is why lawyers and barristers, they write these 1,000-page briefs that say nothing because it drags it on. That's how they make their money. And as soon as you run out of money, sorry, we can't represent you now because you run out of money. It's your job to instruct the lawyer, but nobody does. Everybody listens to a lawyer, and legally, they can't actually give you legal advice. They can give you lawful court process advice, but they can't give you legal advice. And everybody thinks that you're not qualified for this. Lawyers have no idea how to create legal entitlement. That's why they go back and forth, They don't care if they win or lose. It's like a broker, like I never trust a person with the name broker in their name. I've lost more money with brokers than I have anything else because they don't care whether you win or lose. They're on commission.
Isn't that true?
Yes.
You got a stockbroker and the broker's right there in front of you. Isn't it incredible how many things are right in front of us?
I know. Anyway.
Dino, thanks so much for your time tonight. You've got 86 people hanging off every word. Guys, I just strongly encourage you to get, I'll put the link below in Telegram very shortly. Dino, you are one of the most intelligent men I know. I actually think you're a genius. I've told a few people lately I think you're a genius. And I know you shrug it off, but you are running 13 businesses. And if people also get to see some of the other things you're working on, how you juggle the amount of stuff that you're doing is phenomenal. For those of you who don't know as well, Dean helps a lot of people, a lot of patients as well. I won't say too much about how you do that, but I'll just say this, that his Safe Soda, his Superior Soda has had remarkable results for a lot of people. Does a lot of health consults as well as his other 13 businesses and 7 children. I think you're an amazing man. And
thank you, my friend.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the call tonight, mate. Everyone appreciates your time. And I will put the link to your workshop again. Any final words before we wrap up the call?
Mate, I just want to thank everyone for hanging around for so long, listening to me. And thanks, Dave, for having me on, mate. I think you're an awesome guy. And I just love doing what I do. You know, it helps when you love, people ask me, how do you do? Aren't you tired? It's not work when you love what you do. And every business that I have, I just love what I do. And it doesn't drain you. It excites you. And I just love it. So thank you so much, mate, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, mate. And if you are the mainstream media out there, look out. We're coming for you.
Thank you so much,
guys. Have a great night. See you soon, folks. Bye for now.